Welcome to Spotlight 640, a show that takes a look at interesting people in and around the Metro Detroit area. I am jcarzu, and my guest for this show is service technician Bob Burnham. I asked Bob to describe the audio chain of a radio broadcast facility.
The first part of the chain after the audio leaves the microphone is the microphone preamp. And the preamp is usually inside the console. Sometimes the bigger stations have mic processing, and it might go to the mic processor before the mic preamp, or there may not be a mic preamp in there. After it goes into through the processing and the mic preamp, then it goes through the console where it's mixed with the other sources. At that point, it usually, it may go into a patching system, but it leaves the studio, and in a lot of stations it goes to what's called a rack room, and there may be some minimal processing in the rack room. From there, it depends on whether the transmitting towers are at that site or if the towers are like several miles away. And there's many different ways of getting the signal from point A to point B. Some stations use some part of the phone system. Other stations use a microwave.
I then asked him about the pressurization of transmission cables.
The higher the power of the transmitting station, the thicker the transmission cable has to be. And it's also pressurized in the higher power ratings with nitrogen usually. It also depends on whether it's FM or AM. FM has more of a tendency to what's called flash over, so they tend to use pressurization at very, like at half-inch sizes.
I asked him about antennas.
The match of the antenna in the FM world to the frequency you're on is very critical, and the formation of ice on the antenna will cause a mismatch, which in turn can cause the transmitter to shut down or cause failure of the transmission line. So it's very important to keep the ice off of the FM. AM, it can also affect a directional pattern to a limited extent, but usually it's not as critical. Antenna polarization, that has to do with whether the transmission is vertical or horizontal. There's also something called circular polarization, which is most commonly used in FM. In educational low power stations, they'll use horizontal or vertical. Generally, horizontal is used if it's not circular.
If you were just tuning in, I'm speaking with the service technician Bob Burnham. I asked Bob to describe a city grade signal.
FM, the exciter is the most important part as far as the quality of the sound, the left and right stereo separation, etc. In AM, there's many different factors involved, but the processing and the transmitter itself. We know that a station with a 50,000 watt signal is going to be able to deliver a better quality product farther away than a 1,000 watt station. There is a measurement of, it's called millivolts per meter in AM that kind of determines the quality of the signal versus the amount of interference. And if the signal falls within what's called city grade with, for example, AM, then you probably can assume that the quality of the transmission is going to be very good, regardless of what kind of radio is listened to, where they are within that city grade signal.
I'd like to thank service technician Bob Burnham for being a guest on Spotlight 640. Spotlight 640 is heard daily on this radio station and is a production of the students of the Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts. I'm jcarzu. Thanks for listening.